In 2007, a 170-year-old horse chestnut tree in Amsterdam became the center of a global campaign. The tree was showing its age. Fungus and other pests had weakened it considerably. The local government said it posed a risk to surrounding buildings and said it must be cut down. But they hadn't reckoned on the global outcry and ensuing court battle. This tree had been subject to plenty of care and attention for some years. In 1993, the city of Amsterdam had spent 160,000 euros to save the tree from root damage as a result of a leaking fuel tank nearby. In 2005, it had a crown trim after an intense 6-month study by botanists, and many of the conkers were gathered to germinate saplings that were given to schools and other organizations around the world. But why was this tree so special? The answer lies in the pages of a very famous book, The Diary of Anne Frank. You're listening to Plant Connection. Life today can feel overwhelming, like we've drifted away from its natural rhythm. This podcast is your space to slow down, breathe, and rediscover the peace and clarity that come from reconnecting with the natural world. I'm your host, Lisa Cutshaw. Let's reconnect, one plant at a time. When the Germans invaded the Netherlands during World War II, Amsterdam's Jewish population fled or went into hiding. Anne Frank and her family were among them, hiding in the attic of 188 Keizersgracht. Apologies if I got that pronunciation wrong. Only a small window let them see the outside world, and through this window, Anne could see the horse chestnut tree. During her long confinement, the tree became a symbol of hope. Anne mentioned it several times in her diary. On the 23rd of February 1944, she wrote, "Nearly every morning I go to the attic where Peter works to blow the stuffy air out of my lungs. From my favorite spot on the floor, I look up at the blue sky and the bare chestnut tree, on whose branches droplets shine, and at the seagulls and other birds as they glide like silver. As long as this exists, I thought, and I may live to see it, this sunshine, the cloudless skies, while this lasts, I cannot be sad." And then on the 13th of May of the same year, she wrote, "Our chestnut tree is in full bloom. It's covered with leaves and is even more beautiful than last year." Less than 3 months later, Anne and her family were discovered, arrested, and sent to concentration camps. The only survivor was Otto, Anne's father. Years later, in 1968, when he read her diary for the first time, he said, "How could I have suspected that it meant so much to Anne to see a patch of blue sky, to observe the gulls during their flight, and how important the chestnut tree was to her, as I recall that she never took an interest in nature, but she longed for it during that time when she felt like a caged bird. She only found consolation in thinking about nature, but she had kept such feelings completely to herself." Anne Frank's story has touched millions and provides a highly personal account of the horrors of fascism and the depth of human resilience. So it's no surprise that the horse chestnut tree became a treasured symbol of light in a dark time. And when the city threatened to cut down the tree in 2007, the substantial outcry stopped their efforts. A judge issued a temporary injunction to stop the removal, and the tree's neighbors and others formed the Foundation Support Anne Frank Tree, which built robust supports for the tree. But even though best efforts were made to keep the tree alive, nature eventually took its course. In 2010, a storm led to the horse chestnut's demise, yet the tree lives on through its countless progeny. Those donated saplings are growing into healthy young trees across other parts of the city, as well as in the US, other European countries, and even Japan. Life persists. The horse chestnut tree is undeniably beautiful, and this is undoubtedly why people have taken it so far beyond its native range. Known scientifically as Aesculus hippocastanum, the tree can grow up to a whopping 130 feet tall, with a wide and shady crown. As the Amsterdam example shows, they can live a long time, sometimes up to 300 years or more. Leaves are large and palmate, which means hand-shaped. They have between 5 and 9 paddle-shaped leaflets that radiate from a single point. The leaves provide food for various insects, including the caterpillars of the distinctive triangle moth, as well as the horse chestnut leaf miner. This larvae is often disliked by gardeners and urban planners, as it makes leaves turn brown and fall prematurely. Fortunately, it doesn't appear that this caterpillar harms the tree too much, as it tends to affect the leaves once the fruits have already developed. But it does make for quite an alarming appearance. And there's also the added ecological bonus that the caterpillars are a tasty treat for small birds. A few months after leafing, the trees come into flower. In Victorian times, thousands of Londoners would gather on Chestnut Sunday in May to see the flowering horse chestnuts of Bushy Park, a festival that's been revived in recent years. And it's no mystery why they are celebrated. The flowers are spectacular. Sometimes called candles due to their shape and color, the flowers are white with a center that changes from yellow to amber to pink through the flowering season. Botanists suspect that the yellow color signals the presence of nectar to pollinators, and the color change indicates that pollination has already happened. As well as nectar, the flowers also provide bees with the resins to make propolis, a gluey substance that they use to seal their hives. But the fruits are perhaps the tree's most distinctive feature: shiny brown conkers encased in a spiky green capsule. These have been an autumnal symbol since time immemorial, and the game of conkers is a storied children's pastime. The first recorded example of the game goes back to 1848 on the UK's Isle of Wight. The most important part of the game is selecting your conker. Then you drill a hole in it and thread it onto a piece of string. You face an opponent and take it in turns to strike the opponent's conker. The first conker that breaks is the loser, and the other, the proud victor. In recent years, health and safety concerns and the rise of alternative entertainment has made the game less popular, but the World Conker Championships are still going strong. The contest began in the British town of Ashton in 1965, when a group of pub-goers were at a loose end after a cancelled fishing trip. They saw the horse chestnut trees close by and decided to have a game of conkers. And from there, the championship was born. These days, competitors from all over the world flock to the UK to take part. An added fact for a quick dose of US patriotism. Just last year, in 2024, the championship title was won by an American for the first time. Kelsey Banchbach, originally from Indianapolis, had only discovered the game a year prior. In an interview for the BBC, she said, "My parents were a little confused when I had to explain what I was doing, but they're so proud nonetheless." She received a trophy, a tea towel, and a coaster for her efforts. As it happens, the game may be where the name conker comes from. An earlier game involving snail shells and hazelnuts was called conquerors. Another possible origin may be the French conque, meaning conch. It may also be onomatopoeic, the conch of one nut hitting another. But when we sing about chestnuts roasting over an open fire, we're not talking about horse chestnuts. Horse chestnuts are not edible. In fact, they contain various compounds that are not good for us. But even though they're not good eating, conkers have long held a powerful place in culture. It's said that keeping 2 conkers in one's pocket can prevent hemorrhoids or rheumatism, while 3 can apparently bring you into money. There's also an old wives' tale that conkers repel spiders, but there's not much scientific proof of that. One use that is scientifically backed up is their use as an environmentally friendly laundry detergent. Conkers are high in saponins, a soap-like chemical. You can easily make it yourself. Begin by smashing or blending a handful of conkers and then leave it in hot water overnight. In the morning, you'll have a cup of detergent ready for use. So we still haven't explored these trees' origin story. Horse chestnut is native to the Balkans, and the story of how it has become ubiquitous across Europe and the US is a fascinating one, steeped in human history. In the mid-1500s, the botanist, plant artist, and physician Pietro Andrea Mattioli is said to have facilitated the introduction of the tree to the rest of Europe, after being sent a twig with a conker by a fellow physician, Willem Quakelbeen, who served the Holy Roman Emperor's ambassador to the Ottoman Empire in Istanbul. Istanbul is probably not part of the tree's native range, but must have been introduced there some time beforehand. Quakelbeen's accompanying letter also gives a clue to the tree's curious name. He writes, "A species of chestnut is frequently found here which has horse as common second name, because devoured 3 or 4 at a time, they give relief to horses sick with chest complaints, in particular cough and worm diseases. As it happens, horse chestnuts are just as toxic to horses as they are for us, so this practice is not at all recommended these days. When he talks about a species of chestnut, Quacklebean is comparing horse chestnut to the European sweet chestnut, which do look superficially similar. In fact, they're in entirely different families, but the name chestnut has since come to refer to both. As my fellow Americans will likely know, the horse chestnut is also present across much of the U.S. these days. It was probably introduced here in the 1740s. There's a record of saplings being sent to the botanist John Bartram, who successfully grew one in his Philadelphia garden, where George Washington visited and took notice. Washington obviously liked the tree, because he later obtained a dozen of his own. It's said, perhaps apocryphally, that he planted 13 of the trees to line a path between the houses of his mother and sister in Fredericksburg to represent the 13 original states. In the centuries since their entry into America, horse chestnuts have continued to play a big role in our history. During World War I, for example, the British government asked children to send in conkers for the war effort, though the details of why were kept hush-hush. Behind the scenes, the conkers provided starch, which could be fermented to make acetone, an ingredient in cordite, which is a propellant for ammunition. Hundreds of tons were collected, though most ended up unused and left to rot. The unfortunate truth was, they were just not good enough sources of starch. The centuries-long appreciation of horse chestnuts has also provided us with valuable information about climate change. In Switzerland, ever since 1818, the opening of the first leaf on the Geneva official chestnut tree is recorded publicly and is said to mark the start of spring. With over 200 years of data, this makes up one of the oldest phenological records in the world, and there's a clear trend that the leaves are opening earlier in more recent years. And to bookend our podcast with another story of horse chestnuts providing hope in a dark time, Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, has proudly worn the title of City of Chestnuts for hundreds of years. Many of the trees that line the city's streets and populate its parks are 200 years old or more. The distinctive leaf is the city's official symbol, thought to represent prosperity, fertility, and connection to nature. In May, thousands of horse chestnut trees bloom across the city, in times of peace and conflict alike. This striking tree seems to have played a comforting role in so many of the most troubling times in history, a true exemplar of how the natural world can help us heal and build resilience. I certainly am struck with hope every time I head out to my local park and see the horse chestnut trees, whether in leaf, in bloom, or in fruit, dropping thousands of shiny conkers just ripe for a friendly competition. I hope they give you something of the same feeling too. Thank you for joining me on this journey back to nature with Plant Connection. If this episode resonated with you, be sure to tap subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss the next episode. See you next time.